to tell you, she's leaving for Belgium tomorrow.
Oh, no kidding. For what? So my husband is. So we kind of leave it then before I go. So while he works, I hop on a train. Yeah.
Are you going to go to, what's? Yes, thank you. Please. Thank you. Brussels.
That's where we're staying.
Oh, is he going over to do work at the?
No, he studies the commons. I don't know if you know what the tragedy of the commons is. So it's an idea of how when everyone sort of uses resources for their own self-interest, sort of the ramifications of that. Like, so Eleanor Ostrom was sort of the main person who does. It is kind of. Well, not really. Like, well, I am not really sort of based in political philosophy, right? It's just sort of kind of. And so he studies the tragedy of the commons. And so my favorite way to introduce it to students is imagine like when you go off to a restaurant and you know you're splitting the bill, how everyone sort of.
How are you doing? Good to see you again.
See you too. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Let me introduce you to a friend of mine. This is Sarah Nita, Darren Hawkins.
I'm sorry, your name?
Sarah Nita.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Darren.
So, do you not have a slides or whatever?
It is, and they have some new fancy system.
Oh,
And I have
Everything's
a mic.
ready to go?
where's the computer and slides that go with this
Put
fancy
it in the
system?
back.
In the back?
He
Yeah.
has blanked it for me,
But
so it's all
fine.
ready to go.
We don't have to fuss with that anymore. Huh?
Yeah.
That's lovely.
So tell them for question and answer the students that they have to have a mic and all.
No, I'm going to need a watch. Can I borrow your watch? Oh, perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so I have until what
I
time?
can hold up annoying signs. 10
minutes. What time?
We need to be out of this room by 5.
Okay.
So you can wrap up whenever.
So if you say, so here's the problem with Q&A. What happens if nobody has any questions?
I'll ask you our volunteer.
I'll turn you over to my
You've got
political
lots of
consultant.
Lots of volunteers.
So why don't
Sure.
both of you kind of just stop me at 10:02, and
Okay.
then I'll leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Good
How
idea.
about we do that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And then Darren will do an introduction.
Well, we can do both. We can't just plug it in when you want to watch it.
Put that there.
I'm gonna do back
You
here.
can control slides from there.
It's all right. So, it goes through walls.
Okay, well, I'll
So he's coming, when is for conference? When is his conference? She certainly worked very quickly. So I wouldn't send Paul Ryan here or
So, are you going to be wandering, or
Yeah,
are
and
you
if
going
you
to
don't want, can I wander?
You can. Would you prefer that? It makes it harder to film, apparently. I just checked with the film guy, but we're okay with that.
Well, how about-
Did you?
I talked to the film guy.
What did he say?
Behind the podium, but I said that she'll be walking.
And he said, okay, we can deal with it.
I'm not gonna be pacing like back and forth. Like,
Okay, okay.
But
an
I'll just kind
occasional
of,
wander,
yeah, so you want me to kind of stay?
You can do what you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
You're more important than whatever else.
Yeah. It's however you're most
I
comfortable.
hope I don't mess this up for you.
No, how could you? Drop deadline is nearly passed. Think I'm leaving.
How do you like that?
You'll be fine. Okay, should we get rolling? You're about ready?
Yes.
We've got one or two announcements first.
And then
okay.
just keep my introduction short.
Oh, okay. Very well. Hey, welcome, everybody. My name is Professor Darren Hawkins. I am the coordinator of this lecture series, and we're very pleased to have you with us today. Some of you enrolled in a class here, and others are just joining us for the day. Welcome to all and everyone alike. Since this is the first kind of lecture of the semester, the idea behind this is to introduce students to a wide variety of different career paths and inspirational speakers, and I think you'll find it well worth your while. I enjoy every single one of them. I invariably decide I want to switch careers to whatever the person's talking about because they all sound so fabulous to me. And I'm always inspired as well by things our speakers have to say. Before introducing our speaker, I want to give time for two announcements. Corey, did you have an announcement, or did you already pass that out?
I'd love to make it.
Yeah, please.
So one of the two student programs the Kennedy Center sponsors is called Intercultural Outreach. This is a key program as part of our Title VI Research Center, so the Center for the Study of Europe, our Asian Consortium grant, our National Middle East Language Resource Center. Essentially, it's a class that focuses on the issue of culture and is taught in sort of an interdisciplinary perspective. If you're interested in exploring the idea of culture from an interdisciplinary way, getting a publication on your record, essentially you'll be putting together a teaching unit with a series of lesson plans that will be published eventually and made available for teachers. And also, it gives you something to talk about when you go in for job interviews or even on your resume. I think a lot of us think of ourselves as culturally aware because we served a mission or maybe did a study abroad, but taking a class like this will help you understand that this goes a lot deeper, and there's some very useful strategies and ideas and things that can help you. Think of the class as kind of an internship. It's very experiential in learning. It's a fun class, and it also counts as the General Education Global Awareness Elective. So it's taught on Mondays from 4 to 6. Dr. Anna Preto-Bay teaches that class. It's 2 hours of class time for 3-hour credit because you will spend time working on your publication and also working in the public schools. So if you have any questions, there's a Gmail here. My name's Corey Leonard. I work here at the Kennedy Center. You're welcome to find me as well. And hopefully, I know Monday's the last day to add, so if you have questions, you can find us before. We'd love to see you, if not this semester, in winter semester as well. Thanks, Jim.
That sounds great. Thank you, Corey. It sounds fascinating. Every class I hear about, I want to take too. Donna, we have another announcement now, and I'll probably want to do this as well. Maybe that's why I became a professor. I just wanted to be a perpetual student, and that's the only way to achieve that.
Just wanted to alert you about 2 wonderful internship opportunities sponsored by Political Science. Great dovetail to careers in the area as well. The Washington Seminar Internship is available every semester, a whole semester in Washington, D.C., in a variety of offices. Don't just think Congress. There's lots more. Congress is a big component of that. Couldn't think of a better time to be in Washington, D.C. than this election year, so if you're qualified and ready to apply, you need to have at least junior standing to apply, but you might consider that in the very near future. And then also the Utah Legislative Internship. That's a hands-on experience with the legislature during winter semester when the legislature's in session. And that also is for junior standing students. But we have 2 information meetings coming up next week, one on Thursday, one on Friday. We'd invite you to come and attend one of those so that you can learn more about the program and see how you can apply or how you can work it into your future. I'll just send around some handouts, and we hope to see you next week for more information.
You certainly could have one too, Bill.
Thank you very much.
These internships really are amazing opportunities. I highly recommend an internship at some point. And as she was saying, it's not just politics, right? You can go to Washington, D.C. and intern in a lot of different things affiliated with the public sector in some fashion, health or education, or there's lots of different possibilities. And it's we have a wonderful facility there right near Georgetown where students can stay, live. You can spend a semester in Washington for close to what you spend here in Provo in terms of finances and get all this world practical experience and so forth. So please consider that internship as well. Okay. Well, today we're pleased to welcome Jennifer Hogge to speak on her career and some reflections that she has. Jennifer is a donor liaison for LDS Philanthropies, where she helps facilitate, correlate, and encourage voluntary gifts to LDS Humanitarian Services and BYU Hawaii. And I think I will keep this introduction short. She's had a wide variety of other experiences and posts and so forth. Hopefully she can tell us a little bit about some of that, but she's been involved with a lot of volunteer positions and NGOs and public service in a really wide variety of ways. And so she brings a wealth of experience to us today. She received a BA in political science and a master's degree in public policy from Brigham Young University, and also did some work at Cambridge University. So please welcome today Jennifer Hogge.
Oh, thank you, Darren, for that kind introduction. It's so nice to be here to see and meet all of you. It brings back wonderful memories of my time here at Brigham Young University. I don't know if you realize how lucky you are to be here and what a privilege it is, and how lucky the school is to have you. I wanted to just take a few minutes and share with you, as Darren said, some of my insights into my career and some of the thoughts and the feelings that I have had as I have taken the opportunity to think and reflect on what I would say to you. And so I'm really, like I said, very grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk to you. This is a really exciting time for you guys to be involved in political science. And so you've got some wonderful, wonderful opportunities ahead of you. Oh, good. Thank you. Is there any way maybe that we could dim the lights?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Can everybody hear me if I talk here like this? Is that okay? Okay. As Darren said, I actually work for...
Good, right? Yeah.
Maybe. Does that one go off?
Okay.
Or else I'll just walk around it. Stay behind the podium. Okay. So as Darren mentioned, I actually work for LDS Philanthropies, which is a part of the Office of the Presiding Bishopric in the church. I've been an employee of the church for about 8 years, and it has been, like I said, a wonderful opportunity. I wanted to just start off with actually two really inspiring aspects of revelation that the Savior has given to us through revelation, and I love these. I love these scriptures because they inspire me and my heart and tie directly to political science and government. Doctrine and Covenants 90, the Lord says, "Study and learn and become acquainted with all good books and with languages, tongues, and people." And so I think about that in the context of what you are studying. So before I jump in, give me a little bit of an idea. What is everybody studying? What are your degrees? What are you looking toward doing? Who am I talking to? Go ahead.
Volunteer. Right now I'm double majoring with broadcast journalism and Middle Eastern Studies Arabic.
Okay, broadcast journalism and Middle Eastern studies. Great. Go ahead.
International relations and Russian.
Awesome. Okay.
Also listen.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Political science and Middle Eastern Studies Arabic.
Okay, so everybody's going really international. Yeah, go ahead.
Anthropology and Russian.
Awesome. Great. Great. Well, like you, I was not very long ago, I sat in the same place you sat, really desirous to learn from the experts on what do I do and how do I do this and how do I go about accomplishing what the desires of my heart were. And so I want to talk to you just a little bit about that. The second one, obviously, is the Articles of Faith. And this is the Lord. And what he's giving us, or what he's telling us, is he's inspiring us on a standard of conduct, how he thinks that we ought to live. We believe in being honest, true, chaste, benevolent, virtuous, and in doing good to all men. And if you think about international government, if you think about politics, if you think about our current political situation, we could all make a pretty good argument that being honest, true, and chaste is is a good thing in this current environment. And then David O. McKay makes a really wonderful observation as he quotes in a actual BYU Hawaii address, and he's looking at, again, the Doctrine and Covenants, 88, and he's telling us or encouraging us on what to study. You should teach things both in heaven and in earth and under the earth. And then in parentheses, these are his comments. Geology, mineralogy, things which have been, the whole progress of the human race, things which are, current events. You watch them right today. This is him. The world is in turmoil. Students should know them. Things which must shortly come to pass, the signs of the times because of the turmoil that we have. Things which are at home, domestic relations. Things which are abroad, international relations. The wars and the perplexities of nations and the judgments which are on the land, the inevitable results of contention and hatred. And a knowledge also of countries and kingdoms, also international relations. I love these scriptures and this insight by the Lord because it inspires my heart and my mind to be able to study international relations and to study international government and the reasonings and the reason why. Okay, anybody know what this is? Besides the world's highest mountain? It's Mount Everest, exactly. And that's kind of the theme of what I want to talk to you about tonight is our lives are much like climbing Mount Everest. It's, as you know, Mount Everest is located in Nepal, and there's a pretty rigorous process that one has to go through in order to successfully climb this mountain. There's a lot of work that you do pre-climbing. You hire coaches, you look for expert opinion. There's a certain skill set that you're going to need to ice climb. You're going to need specialized gear and equipment. There's a base camp that everybody arrives at as they prepare to hike up to the various camps, and a lot of the preparation that takes place to hike up to Everest is actually takes place at the base camp. And you have to know much about the preparation process. You might practice climbing other mountains before you go, and it is physically and mentally challenging. The thing that's the most inspiring about climbing Everest, though, is many more people have made it to the top than have actually lost their lives. And as you climb each base camp, there's specific challenges for each area. And so as you mentally prepare to do that, it's not easier, but at least you're prepared. And so I guess my thoughts turn to you today is how can I share the message of my heart that will help you and prepare you as you go out into the world and you look at the international process and you are active participants, sons and daughters of God, and how can you be successful not only in your career but in your life? And what does that look like? And so I just want to take, like I said, some time and share with you a little bit about where I've been and what I've done. I'll spend a little bit of time on that, but I want to spend the majority of the time talking about some of the lessons that I've learned and skill set that I think would be helpful for you. I think over the past 8 years, I've had probably 25, 30 students like you come to my office and say, help me figure out what to do. What do I do? Where do I go? And so I'm kind of drawing from that experience and my own personal one, because like I mentioned, I was you at one point in time, and I had certain expectations for my life. I always thought, 21, 22, I get home from my mission and I get married and I have children, and that's the way it's going to be, and that's not the way it's turned out. But in many ways, there are so many compensatory blessings, and so I guess my message tonight is a message of hope and a message of confidence in your ability to work with the Lord in figuring out how best He can utilize your skills and your talents in these last days. You listen to Elder Bednar, you listen to the brethren, and they talk about building Zion and participating in ushering in the second coming. And I'm not making predictions on the second coming. However, what I am saying is that there is a time for preparation, like Everest. And so I just wanted to give you some words of advice and some thoughts on how to be successful. Okay, so I work at LDS Philanthropies. I also, in the evening time, take the opportunity to teach history, government, and critical thinking, and some of the capstone ethics courses. And teaching has been a real blessing. I get to interact with students such as yourself, and that has been a blessing in my life. I've taught there about 10 years and have loved every minute of the opportunity to immerse myself in history and government. And then gives you just a little bit of background on my volunteer positions. And I'll go through these quickly. So I graduated from BYU in 1996. I had just been home from my mission. When I was 21, I served in the London South Mission. And I got home, and the first thing I wanted to do was go to Washington, D.C., to the Washington Seminar. So I actually had the opportunity to intern at the House Republican Research Committee on Capitol Hill. And I took a lot of classes. I thought, okay, I was one of the lucky ones. I got into high school. The last semester of my high school, I took a history and government class, and I thought, this is my major. 3 months later, after I graduated from high school, I was here at BYU, and I walked right through BYU. I was, I think, maybe one of the lucky ones because I knew exactly what I wanted to do and how, not necessarily how I was going to do it, but I knew what I wanted to do. Right before I graduated in '96, I took the opportunity to participate in the Model United Nations here at BYU, and I was selected to be a judge on the International Court of Justice. And so right before I graduated, I found myself in New York City sitting on this ICJ court, and I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do. My plan with my degree was that I was going to be a diplomat. I wanted to work back in Washington, D.C., and I had it all planned. I was going to work on Capitol Hill, and then I'd go over to Department of State, and then I'd go to the United Nations. And I was going to be flexible enough that I would go to the UN first, or then maybe I'd go to state, and then I'd go, work in the White House or whatever. I had these great plans. And I think this is one of the life lessons. The impressions came that was not what I was supposed to do, that the Lord had something else in mind. So I think my first bit of advice to you is to be flexible and to put yourself in a position where the Lord can utilize your skills and your talents in unique and wonderful ways. I was a member of the Students for International Development here, and the last semester, as I was participating in Model the United Nations, we put together a Women in Development Conference. So issues that were facing women in the developing world. I had spent 6 months in India living and working after my mission. And India was a transformational experience for me. I had never experienced the magnitude of poverty that existed in India. And I often reflect upon my life and think, I probably would have been somewhat of a different career person had I not had the experience of India, ending up on Wall Street in New York somewhere, just making as much money as I could, because really that's kind of what I thought I should do. And as I worked amongst the people, we spent a month traveling. We worked up in Rajasthan, working in schools and hospitals, up into Delhi and Calcutta, Varanasi. Spent a week working in an orphanage, and then 2 days in Mother Teresa's mission, working in a home for destitute and dying women. The politically correct term would be hospice. And to see that depth of poverty was so eye-opening for me. And it transformed the direction of my life in terms of philanthropy and what I wanted to do. And in fact, one of the main reasons why I ended up in philanthropy, working with humanitarian services on their philanthropic giving, was because of my experience in India. While I was in India, a lot of the elite, kind of the upper class of India, went to Cambridge University, which is the equivalent of our Harvard. And I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. I'm going. So I came back and applied for a Rotary scholarship and didn't make it. And then as I was doing that, came across an opportunity to go to Cambridge for the summer and study international government and economics, and that's what I did for those 2 months. It was wonderful to be back in my home country of where I served. Let's see if there's anything else. So let me take just a few minutes then and talk to you about some of my life lessons, and I'll interdisperse kind of my philanthropic giving. One of the things that led me into philanthropy and doing what I was doing is, I think one of the more powerful lessons, shortly after, like I said, shortly after I graduated, I worked for an international NGO called United Families International. And 3 weeks after I got home from New York, I was invited by a woman who had come to speak to this Women in Development conference to go to Istanbul, Turkey, where we worked on a housing and human settlement policy. So essentially for the next year and a half, 2 years, I worked at the United Nations on international public policy. I was in Rome a couple of times working at the Food and Agricultural Organization on hunger and malnutrition. We worked on social welfare, poverty issues, literacy, hunger, economic issues, healthcare issues, you name it. We worked on it as it pertained to and affected family policy. And that's really where I cut my teeth on international policy and how that works. And about a year and a half, right before 1999, I was given the opportunity to move to New York permanently and to work for United Families at the United Nations. And so I was their director of international family policy. And we worked very closely with the Commission on the Status of Women, which was the body, the arm of the UN that has jurisdiction over women's issues. And while we were there, I took the opportunity to work on the Commission for Sustainable Development in Geneva. And so we went to the UN in Geneva and had that opportunity to spend time, again, getting to know the diplomats and ambassadors and helping them understand the ramifications of public policy and how that affects international law. And they were great experiences. So if I take a step back from myself and I say, okay, you know, wonderful opportunities, great opportunities, how does that help you? How do I help you be successful? What can I provide for you in terms of maybe some direction or some wisdom and some counsel, as I've had the opportunity to interact with people from all different walks of life? So here are my life lessons. I've divided it in between life lessons, essential skills, and then skills that I have observed that set people apart. How do you set yourself apart? My friend who's here tonight, we were at a Zions Bank Government and Economics Conference about 2 months ago. And Carly Fiorina, who is one of my all-time heroes, spoke. And she said she made a statement, a line. And if any of you are maybe not familiar with her, she ran HP, has done some great work for the global business community. But she made an observation that has really stuck with me that I've not forgotten. And her comment was this: we live in a fiercely competitive world. And then she went on. But all I heard was, we live in a fiercely competitive world. So if you students are about to enter into a fiercely competitive world, how can I help you be successful? How can I help you compete with the best? This is a great school. There's so much that lies ahead. You have so much wisdom and talent and great things in store. So how can I help you be successful in those endeavors? So these are my observations. First and foremost, love the Lord. Obvious, that's an obvious one. Help build Zion and follow the prophet. My first two, most important, are love the Lord and spend time with your families. Those are your most important goals. Those are your big rocks in life, and then fill in with sand and smaller rocks. But make sure you have those two in place so that the Lord can bless you. It's always really interesting when people say to me, how has all this happened, or what have you done? And my reaction is I kind of always giggle just a bit, because I think it's just kind of the Lord blessing me as I go. I haven't really ever had to find a job. Jobs have come to me. And I've tried to live in a way and in a manner with a soft heart in which the Lord can direct and guide me as I seek to do what I think He would like me to do. Number one, expect challenges and failures. That's just part of life. And some of those challenges and failures are going to be tough. But this is Everest you're climbing. And so expect that things are going to happen. And instead of freaking out or fearing, prepare for them. One of the things that I do quite frequently is, well, first of all, you can't, never mind, I got to remember I'm being recorded. I was going to say, you can't be fired from the church. You can't really be fired from the church. You can be fired from the church for two reasons: instant firing, porn, and stealing. They'll just fire you instantly. Otherwise, it's a little harder to get fired from the church. But nevertheless, frequently, can we just blank that out? Dear President Monson. And so frequently, I'll just kind of close my eyes and say, okay, if I were fired tomorrow, or if I was to lose my job tomorrow, what skill set would I need to hit the ground running to find another job? What do I need to be doing now? Does that mean I need to be sitting on boards? Does that mean I need to be volunteering? But I go through those mental exercises quite regularly. I prepare for challenges, and I prepare for failures. And I'll talk about failures in just a second. You can learn leadership from good leaders and bad leaders. Let's just be frank. You can learn it either the easy way or the hard way, which means please be a good leader and know what that means, so that the people who work under you don't have to learn leadership from your bad leadership. And that is really important. Be an expert in your field. Work harder than everybody else. And I'm going to talk a little bit about expert performance and what that means. Be the best. Be excellent. Careful of the balance, because you've also got to love the Lord and build your family. So don't be so consumed in your career that you forget that there are other things just as or more important. Keep your eye on the goal. That's an interesting piece of advice. I was listening to a dear friend who holds a fairly high political position here in the state of Utah, and we were talking about some of the people who she had seen who had made some really bad decisions. In fact, decisions, they are LDS, and they were LDS and had done some things that had ended them, the stories had ended up in the papers, and I was talking to her about that. I was just so saddened to listen to these stories, and I said, how do you work in this environment that is so politically competitive and so much temptation, and she's married with a family. How do you work, amongst all of this? And she said to me, "Oh, it's easy. I just keep my eye on the goal. Why am I here? So in my job is to help bring in money for the humanitarian efforts of the church and students who are going to school at BYU from the Pacific Rim who can't afford it. That's my goal. My goal isn't to mess around with people who are married. My goal isn't to make the most money. My goal is to keep my covenants intact and keep my eye on why I'm here. And that was such a powerful lesson for me. Keep my eye on the goal. Why am I here? Money is neutral. We work with people who have inordinate amounts of money in philanthropy. One of the things you learn very quickly is money can either build or destroy. Be aware of that. It's a tool. You can use it to bless, you can use it for other reasons. And, of course, be philanthropic with your money. It's interesting. David Brooks, I think he's one of the professors, he's a Catholic professor that spoke here at BYU a couple of years ago, and he did a study on philanthropic families. And he's found something really interesting. He found kind of a contrary correlation. It's not the rich people who give. People give, and then they become rich. John Huntsman, even when he didn't have money, gave a portion of his income to philanthropy. Practice philanthropy today. There's so much we can do to help and bless people's lives. Okay, essential skills that you will need, and this is, again, from my observation and experience. One of the most important things that I have had to learn over the years, working with ambassadors, working with diplomats, working with church leaders, working with, the wealthy, working with corporate heads. Learn how to communicate, to build and maintain relationships. Have emotional IQ. That is probably one of the most essential. And the great thing about it is, you're not wasting your time because you need that in a marriage, and you need that when you communicate with Heavenly Father. So learn how to communicate. Utilize mentors and coaches in all aspects of your life. The best performers always have coaches. Always. You go and you watch the Olympians, you watch these people, and they have expert coaches, which it means it's going to take concentration and dedication on your part and a willingness to work hard. Be professional and articulate. Again, I'm thinking, toughly competitive world, what's going to set you apart? How can I help you be successful? Be highly competitive and innovative. Practice virtue and moral courage. Those are two really essential things that you will need in your government positions, in your nonprofit positions, and in your philanthropy. As you go about and think about, I was talking to a gentleman the other day who runs all of the investments for the church. And we were running through a scenario of a financial forum that one of the gentlemen were hosting, and he asked this man, he said, "What would you like me to talk about?" And he gave some examples, and he said, one of the things that we have been asked by our church leaders, he said, in these perilous times, where do we invest the Lord's money? So in other words, what he's asking is, in these perilous times, where do we invest your tithing? This is the Lord's money. Where do we invest this to be able to bless people's lives? That requires some virtue and moral courage on your part to be living in a way that the Lord can bless and help you and provide you with the ability to be successful. You have the best coach, the best mentor in our Savior and in Heavenly Father. Read continuously. Okay, so I do have to tell you that, can we talk about our addictions? Yeah. Okay, so I have an addiction. I probably read more than I should. I've been known to sit in airplanes for long periods of time next to somebody and never say a word to them because I just am reading. I just read constantly. And then, so there's one more little thing we're going to have to get off this video is sometimes I read when I'm driving. Because it's long, it's 3 hours to places, and I just get bored, and so I read. So I read constantly. I read constantly. I read history, and I read government constantly. And here's why. Because I teach. I teach students who have a certain expectation that I'm going to be an expert in my field. And again, when I'm teaching at the university, I want these students to have the very best information that I can. And I'm not much older than these guys. And so I feel I put a burden on myself to be the best that I can in terms of understanding history and government so that I can help them. So read. And then implement, grow, and thrive from your readings. Be humble in your success and learn from your failures. Let's talk a little bit about success and failure for just a second. My first comment about this is have a very clear idea in your mind of what it means to succeed and what it means to fail. At the end of your life, will success be that you have the most money, but maybe no family and children because you spent your whole life making money? Will failure be for me, well, let's just talk a little bit more personally. Will failure be for me that I'm this age and not married? Will failure for me, and I've had to have some very frank talks with myself about what success means and what failure means, because I find myself at this age in a very, very different place than I ever anticipated. I never thought when I was sitting where you were that I'd end up working for the church. That just wasn't even in my horizon of understanding. But understanding for me what it means to fail and what it means to succeed. So let me tell you, for me, failure is not trying. That's my definition. So it doesn't matter how many people tell me no, they don't want to employ me. It doesn't mean how many applications I fill out or resumes that I turn in and I get 150 rejections. That's not failure. Failure is that I stopped trying for the jobs. And success, again, is a very different definition. So make sure you have a clear understanding in your mind of what it means to be successful and what it means to fail. Okay, skill set to set yourself apart. Learn how to be genuine. Learn how to be a great networker, but be genuine about it. Again, most everything I've been able to do, most of what I do day to day in my job in philanthropy is relationships. My relationships are everything. I do business. I do my work based on my relationships. If I need something at Zion's Bank, I usually just call and get my business done. Call the president and say, this is what I need. So most of what I do is based upon my relationships, which means you have to have good relationships because these people travel in the same circles. They all travel in the same circles. And so you want to be the best. This was a hard one for me. Know how to engage in small talk. I want to just jump in and start talking to you about AIDS in Africa, and that I was in a city in Kenya of 80,000, and 30,000 of those 80,000 people had HIV. And then I understood what a pandemic was. I want to talk about the girl that I saw in an orphanage in Mozambique who had fallen in the fire, and the whole side of her face was melted. That's what I want to talk about. People don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about the weather. They want to talk about their children. So learn how to do that so that you can meet them on their level. Be proactive. Again, think fiercely competitive. You're going to have to learn how to be proactive in your endeavors. You're going to have to knock down those doors and do what you need to do to be successful, because you're not just competing with the United States, you're competing with the global world. Be professional, goes without saying. Learn and use etiquette. This is an interesting one because we get a lot of the talk about etiquette and the way to conduct ourselves from church leaders, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. But let me tell you kind of the practical application. Confession, I read etiquette books. Because I'm sitting there talking with a senator and an ambassador comes up. Did you guys know that there's a process of how you introduce? The person of the highest rank gets introduced to the person with the lowest rank. Now, frankly, does it really matter? Well, not really, but if you're going to set yourself apart, know how to do things like that. You know, you read these Amazon stories of when you go out and apply for these jobs, one of the things that they do is they take you to a restaurant so they see how you eat, you know, because you're going to be in these international settings, and they want to know how you conduct yourself if you represent their company well. Same thing. Learn how to use proper utensils. Learn how to present yourself. Know what's expected. Understand the unwritten Understand the unwritten rules in your industry so that you can be successful. Okay, so let me just conclude, and then I'll wrap up with some questions and answers. I want to conclude with one of my very favorite stories. And so I have to be careful how I tell this story because I'm reading this book, and it's called Talent is Overrated. And it's by Jeffrey Colvin, who is a Fortune editor-in-chief. So what he's doing is he's looking at how do we get Tiger Woods? Are you born? Is Tiger Woods born? Is Mozart born? Is Microsoft guy? Bill Gates, thank you. Yes, I'm smart. You know, how do we get the Bill Gates of this world? And his argument, his thesis in this book, Talent is Overrated, is you're not born with this IQ. And the great thing about these books is I get to talk about this in my critical thinking classes. And I talk to my students about the fact that you're not born to be some special genius. That is a talent that is acquired. So I'm reading through this, and Jeffrey Colvin starts talking about Jerry Rice, and I'm like, this is an amazing story. Who is Jerry Rice? So I have to Google Jerry Rice to know who he is, and my colleagues get a big laugh out of that because I'm like, oh. So for those of you who don't know who Jerry Rice is, he's the greatest wide receiver of all time. So I'm doing this today. I'm talking to my colleague. I'm like, does a wide receiver play offense or defense? My colleague is like, oh, man. So you're going to know more about this guy than I am. But what I want to do is share with you the story. So greatest wide receiver of all time. Chosen the top 100 NFL's greatest players in history. All-time leader in the most major statistical categories for wide receivers. He's selected to the Pro Bowl 13 times, wins three Super Bowl rings. So Jerry Rice, is well known. He's a well-known workout fanatic, and he's known as being the most hardworking and the most disciplined. But okay, well and great. But here's the clincher of Jerry Rice. Even after an excellent college career, so he graduates from college, Rice did not possess outstanding speed, a quality that coaches generally consider mandatory in a great receiver. So then the question becomes, Jerry Rice graduates from college, goes to the NFL. In between that time, he comes out, he has caught 197 touchdowns. Before that, the record was 148. So he's like the greatest wide receiver who, by the way, offense. Greatest wide receiver of all time. So what makes him great? And this is what Jeffrey Colvin is going to say. So let me tell you what he says. So here's the lessons that they learn. It's called deliberate practice. Let me tell you what it means. Deliberate practice. The difference between expert performers and normal adults reflect a lifelong period of deliberate effort to improve performance in a specific domain. So what Jerry Rice did Why was he so great? Why was he the hardest working? Why was he the most disciplined? Is because he was willing to put in the long hours of grueling practice. He was world class in his self-discipline. And the thing about Jerry, we're on first name basis, the thing about Jerry is he spends very little time playing football. He designed his practice to work on specific needs. So deliberate practice is a lot of hard work. And he's not just doing, like, okay, let's go do some running. He's working in areas that he's the weakest on. So he is deliberately practicing in areas that are the hardest for him to overcome. It wasn't fun. And he defied the conventional age limits. So what I learned from Jerry Rice is this amazingly inspiring story of this man who, from the time he graduates to NFL, he comes out the best. And I can do the same thing. Just requires a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work and a lot of dedication in areas that I'm not good at. So if I don't know, if I've got to do a Civil War presentation to a bunch of students at school, and I don't know very much about the Civil War, that means I'm going to probably spend 5 or 6 hours preparing for something on the Civil War so that I can be an expert in that field. And the best line is, by the way, Jeffrey Colvin says, Jerry Rice knew exactly what he was doing. He just didn't become great by default. He knew exactly what he was doing. So that's my message to you today, is again a message of hope and a message of confidence in your ability to be successful. So let me take the last 10 minutes and answer some questions. How can I be helpful to you? What are some of your burning questions that I could answer for you? I'm not going to claim any special insider wisdom, but how can I help you with maybe some of your insight and wisdom? Yes, please.
We have a microphone. If you'd wait for it, please.
And
Is it working, Kelly? Yep, there you go. Who was it? There was somebody back there.
Gentleman in the back with the body armor symbol on.
How did you find a good balance between career and family life?
That's a really good question because, not having had the opportunity yet to marry, that I feel like that commandment still pertains to me. I have 8 brothers and sisters and 50 nieces and nephews. And I spend a lot of time with my nieces and nephews. I spend a lot of time with the girls. We spend a lot of time shopping. I gotta just tell you, we do, and it is so fun. And I spend time with them. I spend time with my sisters. My little nephew called me the other day. He was having a bad Monday, so I went and bought some Hershey Kisses at the store and threw them in the mail and sent him my kisses. I try to keep my priorities at the very top. Because I try to think eternally. I think, okay, 40 more years, 50 more years, and I'm done with this life, and I've got a report on my life. And what is the Lord going to ask me? It's the same questions we all ask ourselves. He's not going to say, hey, great car you drive. Well, he might. But, so I try really hard to work on that. Again, go back to deliberate practice. I try really hard to do something with that every day. A little harder for me because I don't have immediate children and family demanding on me. So I work on that, which I am inherently a little weak on. And so I just say that's a Jerry Rice work. And I keep those priorities at the front of my mind. Does that help? Okay. Other questions that I could answer for you? Yes, please.
Okay, so best speaks to me.
Sorry?
Being the best speaks to me.
Yeah, sure.
I don't quite know what I want to do.
Okay.
Is there a book that you would suggest that reading or some other resource for that?
Yeah, there is. The best book that I have ever found to help me. I would highly recommend it. It's called the Book of Mormon. Spend time in the scriptures. And you will get inspiration on what to do. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be glib, but really, it kind of goes back to this question of deliberate practice. I have a tendency to read a ton on everything. And so I'm constantly gleaning from different sources. So if you were to say a book, and let me tell you an experience I had from that. I'm in Paris for my 40th birthday 2 years ago. And I'd been there for 5 days. And I was in the Musée d'Orsay. And I'm looking at this beautiful art. And all of a sudden, I just this feeling of kind of world weary, like, oh, I'm so tired. And I just kind of said to myself, where do I find the wisdom of the ages? And you know what the Spirit said to me? In the scriptures. And I realized that I wasn't really looking for the wisdom of the ages in Paris. I was just looking to have fun. But I realized I don't have to fly all the way to Paris to look at all this great art and this beautiful art, which, grant you, is beautiful. No doubt. But I'll never forget that experience of, just kind of leaning my head down and saying, where do I find the wisdom of the ages? And clear as anything in the scriptures. And that was a beautiful reminder for me to spend time in the scriptures. And then it will come. I guess if I were to reflect, and it's always a little bit awkward for me when I talk about my career, is, how did you do it? How did you accomplish? And my response is, I kind of just was there, and then Heavenly Father just kind of put things in my path so that I could do these fun things. And I think that same principle, He doesn't love me any more than He loves you. I think that same principle applies, that if you live in such a way that the Lord can bless you, that He will. And it will be and it will be an amazing journey. And sometimes the lessons you need to learn is not in the destination, but the actual getting there. There's lessons to be learned along the way. Other questions that I might be able to answer for you in the last couple minutes? Yeah, go ahead.
Are there some, I love your whole presentation, but the point to be professional, I feel like I struggle with. I'm not sure how to do that. Are there some big faux pas that we should just really avoid?
Yeah, there are. That's a really great question. How you dress. I have done some visits in Washington, D.C. and New York, and let me just be frank with you. Sorry, men, but I've walked in, and women are just kind of hanging out, and their skirts come clear up to here, and I think it's a reflection on who they are. So the way you dress, for sure. The way that you conduct yourself. People have a certain, it's a little bit different for me, because when I go, I'm representing not just LDS Philanthropies, but I'm representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't have a whole lot of room to screw up. And so the way you dress, the way that you conduct yourself, the way that you interact with people of the opposite sex, and the way that you, your ability to converse and to interact. I work around some people, and all they do is want to talk about their social lives. Well, in a professional setting, You need to know when it's appropriate to talk about personal things and when it's not to talk about personal things. It's just the ability to observe the unwritten rules of whatever venue you're operating in. At the United Nations, there's always men there looking for a good time. So if I'm there looking for a good time, I'm going to find that. If I'm there looking to talk about international policy, I'm going to find that as well. So again, it's keeping your eye on the goal and having a certain idea of what it is you want to accomplish and how you want it and how you want to look at that. And having a sense of, you know, and I think, again, this is a true principle for men and women, is having a sense of who you are. I'm a daughter of God, first and foremost, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so with that comes certain opportunities, but also certain responsibilities of conduct. And so I don't let things hang out that shouldn't hang out. I don't say things that I shouldn't say that's inappropriate, that all of us struggle with. I mean, I could say inappropriate things, it's just I don't. And so it's just that ability to be emotionally intelligent, to use your EQ to say, okay, what would be the most appropriate, and to keep your eye on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because wherever you look, you'll find. Yes, go ahead.
What is an etiquette book that you would recommend?
I've got like 4 of them that I can think of. Probably Emily Post's book is the best, because that's going to tell you how to set a table. It's going to tell you how to do introductions. It's going to tell you proper conduct. That one, and then, you know, I have to tell you, I Googled how to engage in small talk. I'm telling you that I did because I didn't know how to do it. So I keep a notebook of notes. Okay, and let's just be honest, sometimes I'm in boring meetings. So I read those. I keep them in front of my face constantly. I read the most important etiquette tips of how to conduct myself, of how to dress appropriately. So it's not something I just read 10 years ago. It's something that I try to keep at the forefront of my mind so that it doesn't get rusty. It's much like exercise. You got to keep on top of it to be relevant. Again, fiercely competitive. What am I going to do to be fiercely competitive? How am I going to compete? And I'm not saying competing means making the most money. I'm just saying being relevant in what you do. Does that answer your question? Emily Post. Yeah. And then Vanderbilt has another good etiquette book as well.
Was there one more maybe? I think I saw one more hand. Okay, maybe not, sorry. Well, we need to wrap up anyway, so let's
thank you, Darren.
Jennifer so much. So maybe we ought to redo our curriculum and add some etiquette classes and political science.
I would highly, can I come down and teach it, please? I'll do it for free.